Hi, this is Russell Oakes. I'm the Customer Services Manager at Box Telematics. I'm going to take you through some of the aspects of the SPOTON tracking software. Today's video, we're going to show you the report section within the admin of SPOTON. Previously, we've been looking at the vehicle section here, but if you click on admin, click on reporting and then report, it will bring you to this screen. I'll take you through the three different sections. The first two are rarely used by people, but they're there to be used if you want. You've got an asset exception report, which if you've got more than just vehicles on the system, will give you a detailed report of any out of the ordinary occurrences which you can specify. It's a difficult one to show for the asset point of view because we're only looking at vehicles, but I will show you a vehicle exception report later on. Your next three options here are the service report, which allows you to see if any of the assets haven't sent any data for a certain period. Maybe if the vehicle's battery's gone flat or it's been parked in an area with poor mobile phone coverage, then it's unable to send any data, and you'll be able to see it on here. So if you've got a fleet of 100 vehicles, rather than checking each one individually to see if it's sent data, you can just run this report. The login report will give you a overview of who's actually logging into SPOTON for your company, so you can see which users are using it and when. And the service report shows you any assets or vehicles that have been added or removed from the system or modified. So if you've got someone doing your installations, then you can check and see which ones have been added on certain days. So I won't go too in depth into those, they're not used that much, but feel free to have a play around and see what information is on there. But the main section here is this vehicle and driver reports. Now you'll see there's a repetition of some of the previous reports that we've seen on the main vehicle screen here. Daily activity, daily visits, and they're there again. What I'll show you on daily activity as an example is how to actually generate any of these reports. You click on the report in question and it will give you this report requester screen, which is where you specify the kind of information you want on the report. So you can select the date period, report from this date, 1 day's worth of data, the report type, which is a PDF file for Adobe Acrobat Reader or anything else, Excel for just a spreadsheet, or CSV for a text-based version of the information which you could import into your system if need be. You can then choose if you want to report on the vehicles or the drivers, depending on if you've got certain people driving certain vehicles or different vehicles, so you can report on how they are performing across all of the vehicles rather than just looking at one vehicle at a time and working out who's driving it. And then there's various options here. Now these options will change depending on the type of report that you're running, but you can do things on this one like include weekends. And it's a case of selecting which display groups you want to be able to show on the report. Display groups is something I'll show in a later video. And click next, and then you can have the option to send a copy of the report by email. If you've got an email address set up against your login on SPOTON, rather than just appearing within SPOTON, you'll receive an email with a copy of that report as well. You can also choose for other people to receive that email by typing their email address in that section. You can choose to actually compress and password protect the reports if they're confidential. You just type a password here, and then rather than having just say a spreadsheet come through, you'll have a zip file come through, and the zip file will have a password on it which will need to be entered before you can actually get at the spreadsheet. So we'll turn that off for this purpose, and all you need to do is press send request. Request is added to the queue. Now when it says it's queued, these reports, rather than being run on your PC, are actually being run by our servers, which allows us to do the automation side of things, which I'll come on to. But if you click finish, you'll see here, for a moment there it said pending, but now it's got this here. Now it's complaining that we haven't got an email address set up. That's because I haven't on this login, but otherwise this remarks would be empty. So there you got the daily activity. You can just double click on it, and then you've got the PDF. So that's generally how you generate any of these reports in this section. So I'm not going to go through those steps for each one, but I'll explain what the reports themselves do. You've got the daily visit report, again from the previous, same as on the main fleet screen, just shows you where the vehicles have been standing at. You've got the driver performance summary, which is one I'll come back to because it's quite in depth and only specific to one product that we offer at the moment. Now that you've got the driver utilization report, it says shows driver utilization over a period, listing journeys made, distance driven, speeding occurrences, etc. I've already run one of these down here, so if we select the driver utilization report and open it, and ignoring the copy of Excel on this machine, it gives you a breakdown of exactly what they've been doing. Now you've got various columns here. So I'll go through them one by one, and there is a driver utilization report. There's also a vehicle utilization report, which gives the same information, but again, either use the driver one for if you've got drivers that drive different vehicles, or use the vehicle if you just want to know what that one vehicle has been doing itself, regardless of who's been driving it. So we've got here the group name if you've got more than one display group, the driver name in question, the date that they last made a journey during that report period that you selected, the number of business and private journeys they've carried out. As I said, if you use driver ID keys, you can select between one and the two. Total amount of journeys, which is a total of those two. Total business mileage, total private mileage, total mileage overall. Now the average mileage is per journey during that period, because this is just a summary of everything during the period you selected. Now business minutes is the amount of time that they've actually been driving using business keys, as is private minutes as well, total minutes. Total driving minutes, so it's the total amount of time actually moving. Average journey in minutes, 14.2. And as mentioned on one of the previous videos regarding journeys, you've got the amount of events. Now these are individual events. These are times. This is the amount of time that it's been spent as an idle start, which is where you're idle before setting off on a journey. Idle journey, which is where you're idle during the journeys, and then the idle end, which is you sit idle before turning the ignition off. And again, harsh braking, harsh acceleration, a total amount of those events that have happened during the period you've selected. And now the speeding ones. Now the speeding are only included if you've got the speeding, the columns are there, but it might not have information if you're using our road speed optional extra. What this gives you is a count of the amount of times that the speed has been exceeded for the road. So you'll see, although this little drop down actually covers up the full number on our screen, but it's speeding count above 0, above 10, above 20, above 30. Now what that means is, if say they're on a 30 mile an hour road and they go 33 miles an hour, then that will count as a above 0. So 0 to 10 miles an hour above the speed limit. So that'd be up to 40 miles an hour on a 30 miles an hour road. If they went above 40, so they went 42, that would be an above 10. So 7 times during the period that we've looked at, they have gone 10 miles or more, or between 10 and 20 miles, above the speed limit of the road. And then you've got above 20 and above 30, and we leave it at that, because any more then you've got something to worry about. I think, if you're going 60 miles an hour and 30s, things like that. You've got the total amount of events that they've been speeding. The maximum they were speeding above the speed limit, so this was 26 miles an hour, hence why that will be the speed at one of those 3 speeding count above 20s. So he's doing 26 miles an hour above the speed limit. Obviously the higher that number is, the more you need to worry about it. Then you've got the driver count, which is the number of times that a driver has presented themselves to the vehicle before driving it. Unique drivers, which is how many different drivers, regardless of how many times they've been on there, have used it. So in this case you can see there's 24 times the key's been presented, but there's only ever one driver, so that hasn't gone up. But if you've got 5 or 6 drivers, that number will go up. Sites visited is regarding the geofences, which we've mentioned, and the unique sites visited. So they've been to five sites, but actually only 2 sites, a maximum of 5 times. So that's that report. There's some summarization down here with the same kind of information for the group, and just an overview thing. So you can print that off if you want. Nope. Okay. Then going back to these reports, again, the same things I showed on the main screen. The late and early report, the out of hours report, the timesheet report, they're all exactly the same information as before, just a different way to get at them. The reason that we actually do duplicate across the 2 different parts of the system is because these reports can all be run as part of a schedule, which I'll show you in a minute. Then you've got the vehicle exception report, which will show all of the events which have happened which are out of the norm. So possibly a... Oh, sorry, I've already run. Right, so here we've got, depending on what your exceptions are, you can filter these things down. So you've got all of the individual events that have occurred that are of note. So ignition on, harsh acceleration, excessive idle, things like that, harsh braking, and you can just see when they happened, and you can filter as it's in Excel. So you can just show all of the harsh acceleration events. It's just to give you a breakdown of exactly what they've been doing and where. Might come in handy, but it's there if you need to use it or not. Now that exception report is exactly the same as I showed for, or that I was going to show for the asset report at the top here. But the asset report doesn't relate to vehicle, so you'll be using the vehicle exception report one mainly. And then the vehicle utilization report here is the same information as we looked at for the drivers report. As we only had 2 drivers, there's only 2 people on that report. We've got 6 vehicles, so there's 6 on this report. But the same information: business miles, total journeys, total driving, idle information, the speeding counts. Just the same information, but regarding the vehicle registrations rather than the drivers set up on the system. Close that. And that's it for those, but what I'm going to do is go back to this driver utilization report which I mentioned, driver performance summary report which I mentioned earlier. Now this is actually only relating to the CAN bus integrated system. So if you've bought one of the CAN bus systems from us, which is an optional extra with the box tracker which interfaces with the vehicle's onboard electronics and can read far more information about what the vehicle itself is doing, revs, things like that. And then using this report you can gain an idea of how the driver's been driving the vehicle. Now this report, I'll start working from left to right. This color-coded section here will actually color these different cells depending on the criteria they meet. The reason it doesn't on this machine is because it's an older version of Excel which doesn't actually accept what we're trying to do on this report. If you've got the latest version of Excel, it will show these colors properly, but that's about the only difference really. So what I can see here is you've got a performance score which is out of 100. Basically the higher it is, the better it is, and you lose points for the events which you've for the occurrences of bad driving as it's seen by the CAN bus system as such. So it's out of 100, this person's got a score of 58, this person's got 26. If the color coding was working as that was 58, it'd be showing as yellow. As this is 26, they'll be showing as orange, all the way down to red to green. So then you've got the driver in particular, the registration, they're driving. Now you've got the miles per gallon for that for the journeys. You've got the total time they're driving, so 8 hours 31 minutes. The total distance they covered, 242. The fuel that they used in litres, the fuel cost based on the fuel cost per litre specified here, the amount of time percentage wise that they're idle, so that they're sitting there not actually going anywhere. Obviously someone's sitting there running the engine but using fuel but not actually going anywhere, then that would show up on there. But what you've got here is the score section. Now the score section is what actually defines their overall performance score. So they start off with 100, and every time they break one of the thresholds, they lose a point. So there's 30 possible points in harsh braking, 20 possible points in harsh acceleration, 12 in coasting, 10 in cruise control, 8 in excessive RPMs, 8 in excessive torque, 7 in overspeeding, 5 in excessive throttle. Altogether adds up to 100. And if at any time they actually create an event which breaks one of these thresholds, as defined by the vehicle, so say the harsh braking, harsh acceleration, if they do a lot of harsh braking, that number it starts off at 30, it will go down to eventually 0 as it does on this one. So obviously there's quite a lot of harsh braking going on, and same goes for all the others. So I won't go into what actually defines what each one of those things are, as in what is coasting, what is cruise control. That can be explained if you're buying the product. It's quite an in-depth conversation to have. But every time one of those situations occurs, you lose a point. So the less points they've got, the say worse driver they are, I suppose. But they're not driving efficiently, I say. So that's the general information on there. Again, overview. If you wanted to print it off, you get the 2 different pages. But what we can also do is click here, and this will open up a separate web browser window eventually. Here we go, and it takes us to the SPOTON tracking website and gives us some information on the drivers once it's finished loading. Okay, here we go. So this is obviously we selected the information from Billy Bragg, and it breaks down the individual journeys. Again, this is the same kind of information we looked at before: start time, stop time, duration, distance, things like that. But then the percentage of that journey which has been carried out within one of these conditions. So you can see as part of this journey, 35% of it and 35% of it was in excessive RPMs, and 22% of the journey was speeding. So obviously that was a pretty manic journey. As well as that, you can see there's some harsh acceleration, which makes sense as well. You've got to be able to get to those speeds pretty quickly to be able to rev those, get the revs up. So it breaks it all down. I'm not going to go into too much detail on that, but you'll be able to get the idea. Now if we skip to the last page, because all it'll do is give you a breakdown of more and more of the journeys. If we skip to the last page, it gives you a nice summary graph. So if you were to print off this personal scorecard, as it's called, you could give this to the driver, and it shows them exactly where they're falling down. So, harsh braking, not too bad. You're 77%. Ideally, everything should be up in the green as high as possible. But as you can see here, they've lost maximum points for RPM, so they need to be changing gears more often, basically. Be driving more efficiently. Again, speeding, you want to get this down. So it's just being able to see where they're falling down on their driving efficiency. At the bottom, you've got just a couple of summaries: the maximum RPM they hit, the maximum speed they hit, their average mile per gallon, and their general score out of 100, as we saw before. If we close that down, and that. Now if we go into the subscriptions section, I'll just go through this one quickly. What this enables you to do is set up an automated schedule for you to receive any of the reports on the system. So we can right click there, select new, and then you can select the report you want to receive. So daily activity, you get the options, which is the same as we saw on the previous screen, and then you've got the schedule. So you can call this schedule, say, daily activity weekly, because you can receive it weekly, and then you can select send it on the first week of the month if you want, and then which day you want to receive it on, and then click save. And what that'll do, sorry, need to go back, save, and then it adds a schedule on there. So now that happened, you set that up automatically to your email address. You'll receive that report and the schedule that you've set down here. So you can change that. You can add different schedules for different reports going to different people. It means that you don't have to log into SPOTON to check things all the time. You can just get the reports and then work off it from there. That about covers it for this this section of the admin. The next section I'm going to be showing is setting up contacts and some basic administration of your fleet and your users. Otherwise, that's it for this one. Thanks for watching.